Hey everyone. Surprise! I'm still alive, and I'm delivering you a bonus episode of my Exes Storytime series. The reason I'm bringing you this episode before the others is because this one has happened very recently, and this directly involves Animal Jam, which, again, is what I initially built this channel off of. So enjoy this very on-the-fly story time. So, I'm gonna get right into it. I will call the person in this story Flippy, like Flippy the Bear from Happy Tree Friends, because of what I think is their undiagnosed bipolar or borderline personality disorder. Keep in mind before I begin that there were several red flags I had ignored about this person, but still decided to pursue a relationship with them because, firstly, I felt bad, and secondly, because I couldn't exactly control how I felt about them. So, while I acknowledge that I probably shouldn't have gotten involved romantically with this person at all, I do not want to hear how stupid or foolish I was for being with them while I was. I know what risks I took by doing this, and I will own up to the mistakes I made. Now, let's get into it. I had met Flippy because I decided to go visit one of my friends who we'll call Twilight in the Juice Hut. If you recall, I had mentioned her name in the Super Lucky video that is now no longer on my channel. As I entered, I noticed Twilight was hanging with someone I hadn't met before, Flippy. I started talking to both of them, and I ended up exchanging discords with Flippy. I already had Twilight's prior to this. We all got into a group chat and chatted there every now and again. One day I noticed Flippy had left the group and unfriended me on Discord. I asked Twilight what had happened, and she told me she was being groomed by him. That he wanted to date her, he was sending rather explicit messages, and when she said she wasn't interested, he threatened self deletion and called her a bitch. Since she was 17 at the time, he was pretty much grooming her. I did some more research, and apparently he was rather infamous in the Animal Jam community for this exact reason, and some other things. Again, big red flags that I ended up overlooking 6 months later. For a while, I hadn't heard anything from Flippy until I noticed an account followed me on Instagram with his Discord handle. I checked it out, and it was pretty much a page, quote unquote, debunking the stuff that he was being accused of. At the time, I still didn't really believe him, and I believed Twilight, but then one day I ran into him again in the Juice Hut, and I said something like, "Oh, hey, I know you." Then I explained how I was the person who was friends with Twilight. He eventually messaged me on Instagram, and a friendship started to grow from that point forward, and I so foolishly pushed all the red flags and what happened between him and Twilight to the back of my mind. After a while, he changed his profile picture to what he looked like in real life, and I was immediately taken by how he looked. I thought he was really good looking, so I told him, and I guess that's what triggered his feelings for me. At the time, while I did fancy him a bit, I did not act on anything yet. And plus, before that, apparently he had only dated girls and not guys, so at that point, it was kind of confusing. We stayed friends for a bit, and he was even supposed to meet me at a local furry convention, but that ended up not happening because of other reasons, and I also decided not to go to the convention in the end anyway. Around late September, he completely disappeared. He had this habit of deleting his Instagram every time he had a mood swing or whatever was happening with him, and this time he did it and disappeared for months. I honestly ended up forgetting about him for a while because of events happening in my own life that took priority over wondering where Flippy was at. Things like my grandma passing away and having to stay at a friend's for a whole week to avoid a family member I really didn't want to see in person. One night, right before Thanksgiving, while I was at work, I checked who viewed my Instagram story out of curiosity and noticed Flippy had done so. I then posted a story saying, quote unquote, someone I used to have a crush on is stalking my page, to see if he would say anything, and he replied to it and said, "Wait, is it me?" And I just responded with that one blushing, wide eyed emoji and closed the chat for the time being. I was at work after all. After that, during my break, I saw he sent me like 6 voice messages, so I played them all. He basically just described where he had been and what he'd been up to for the past couple months. We started to get a little more flirtatious, and he was calling me cute and stuff, but I let it happen. Before I continue, let me preface that I had recently came out as polyamorous publicly. My current and only partner at the moment knows about this and knew something was going on between me and Flippy because I told him, and while he wasn't and isn't happy about it because he himself is monogamous, he didn't really do much about it, and he can't change that I'm polyamorous. If I hadn't decided to embrace my polyamory a few days prior to me and Flippy starting whatever it was between us, this would have never happened. So, having embraced my polyamory, I formally confessed to Flippy how I felt about him, effectively letting my walls down. I didn't get an immediate response, but he responded that he did feel the same, but wasn't sure he was ready for a relationship. I had made sure when he was ready that he didn't care if I was polyamorous, and he said that he didn't mind it, but wouldn't seek out more than one partner himself. A couple days later, he sent me a message that he was going to go through with self deletion, so I panicked and tried to reach out, but he had already blocked me on everything: Instagram, Discord, my phone number, so I just hoped and prayed he would text me later. He ended up doing so, and I felt so relieved. I had sent him like a 5-minute video pretty much saying what he did really scared me and that I loved him and I just wanted him to be safe. Whatever was between us kind of gradually happened from that point forward. We got gradually more affectionate towards one another and grew closer, so eventually I guess we were an item. We had been texting and calling practically every day. We FaceTimed for the first time, and while he definitely looked different from his profile pictures, I didn't let it bother me because it was clearly the same person. Compared to his profile picture, he just gained a little weight and grew facial hair, was all. I had shown him a few partial pics of my face in the past, but as we grew closer and called more, I finally had the courage to show him my face in its entirety and let my walls down even more. I had even invited him to meet me in person when I go to vacation with my older brother next month to the American Dream Mall in Jersey City, and he was very excited about the trip initially, but then became wishy-washy a little later on because he was afraid his work wouldn't give him the days he needed, or worse, fire him. I reassured him that all he needed to do was ask, and they couldn't fire him. The worst they could say is no. My intentions, if he did meet me in Jersey, were to see how we connected and vibed in person. If we had good chemistry, chances are our relationship would have become serious, and I probably would have dumped my current partner because of his monogamy compared to my polyamory. And since Flippy allegedly didn't give a shit about me being polyamorous, I would rather be with someone who didn't care or was poly themselves. If things didn't work out, my brother and I would have told him to get lost, and anything we had would have ended with that. Things were going well until last Wednesday, when he seemed off for sure, and then posted on his TikTok that he did not care about anyone or anything, and that he felt bad for the people who fell in love with him. I decided not to say anything about it and just let him be, but I was pissed. So I initially typed up a text to send him that I was done with his shenanigans, but accidentally sent said text to my brother. Luckily, he knew it wasn't about him, so that was solved pretty quickly. While my partner knew about Flippy, he hadn't quite understood my true intentions at first, and I pretty much had to come clean about what exactly was going to happen in Jersey and the possible outcomes. While hurt, he understood my feelings and promised to curb his attitude. Long story short, my partner can be an asshole sometimes. The next day, Flippy called and texted me like nothing had ever happened. At first, I was going to be rude about it, but decided to give him a second chance because I am a firm believer in second chances, and if I feel someone deserves one, I will give them one. I did, however, confront him on call about his little outburst, and he got all upset and emotional, so I was pretty much forced to backpedal and say that I was just worried and I wasn't mad or anything, when in reality I was. I just didn't want to run the risk of triggering another episode. Things seemed okay from there, but then comes Sunday. I hadn't heard from Flippy in about a day, and considering how clingy he could be sometimes, I was a tad bit concerned. I didn't try to reach out, however, as I was spending the day with my partner, so I was occupied. My partner went to get us food at Subway, he went in, I had stayed in the car. About a minute later, I get a call from Flippy. I answered the phone since my partner was currently in the building. If my partner had been with me, I would have ignored the call. I answered, and Flippy basically ended anything we had and cut all contact, spewing some crap about wanting to be alone and that he wishes his family would abandon him so he could just be on his own. I didn't know what to say except that I respected his decision, and he pretty much just said, "Have a good life," and then the call was terminated. If this had been a week or two prior, I would have begged him to talk to me and tell me what was wrong. But since this was his second chance and I was still quite a bit upset with him for the prior meltdown, I didn't pester. I just didn't care anymore. I was tired of it. I was a bit shook up afterward, but I wasn't crying or anything like I did when he said he was going to do self deletion. I was and am more angry than anything. I foolishly looked past a bunch of red flags and let my walls down for this person only for them to abandon me. Not to mention the huge gamble I would have taken by meeting them in Jersey. I was pissed. I almost gave up a lot more for them than they seemed to realize, and if they had pulled this on me after that trip and I had decided things worked between us, I would have probably turned into a dragon and set the world aflame. I would have been so pissed. I told my partner what had just happened, and being the smartass he is, he said, "Oh, I saw this coming." He said a few more things that could have led to Flippy being jealous of me spending the day with him, since coincidentally, those past couple meltdowns had happened on days I was with my partner, which so happened to be Wednesday and Sunday. I didn't let it dampen my time with him, though, and Flippy became an afterthought for the rest of the day. I haven't heard from Flippy in a couple days, so I'm going to assume this is really it. Probably for the better. So that's what happened between me and my quote unquote AJ boyfriend. Not technically, but we met through AJ, so yeah, sorry for the clickbait title. What I learned from this relationship, or wherever the fuck this was, is to keep in mind the red flags you notice about someone, even if you have feelings for them, and believe all they need is someone who truly cares about them by their side. In reality, Flippy did not need someone who cared about him. He seriously needs to go to therapy, maybe a mental hospital, and get medication for what I assume is bipolar or borderline disorder, though I'm not a therapist, I cannot diagnose him. Having someone care about you will not fix these issues. I still somewhat feel bad and I still care a little bit about Flippy, but I think it's for the best if he works on himself because these issues need to be worked out. He's not going to be able to have a stable relationship with anybody if he keeps pushing people away and then crawling back like a lost puppy looking for love in the people he keeps abandoning. If Flippy ever did come back into my life, I don't think I'd engage and I'd leave his messages on scene and ignore his calls. I gave him two chances, he used them both, and I don't see any reason to give him a third. I used to give more than two chances, but I'm no longer that naive, and once you screw up two times, or once if I don't deem you worthy of a second chance, you're practically dead to me. While I do not have him blocked on everything, if he makes an attempt to contact me anywhere else, he's getting blocked there too. Also, if you're watching this somehow, Flippy, this is for you. If you show up in Jersey City and I see you, I will be calling the police. That's it, everybody. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you whenever I decide to post again. I have the third episode of the Exes Storytime recorded, but I think I'm going to redo it since I recorded it back in September, but never posted it. It'll go up whenever I get around to it. I'm a busy guy. Adios.